And now, back by popular demand, the one, the only, Brady Josephson.
Hey. Y'all, I am so excited to be here with you. This is one of my favorite weeks of the year because of you, the people that come and the community that we can create. I've had the opportunity to be at every NIO summit so far, and I've had the privilege to speak or present or host a live stream at every one except last year. Which begs the question, what happened 2 years ago? I thought I gave a good talk on recurring giving. I thought I had pretty good speaker ratings. They were better than Tim Kachuriak's. So no matter how good this is, score me a little less because I'd love to come back next year, all right? So I'm going to take you on this journey with us as Charity Water and I learn how we can generate future demand. So I want you to get out your cell phones. We're going to have some polls. If you're back behind the curtains, you might need to come out behind the curtain so you can scan this. You can join at slideu.com or scan this QR code. Vendor hall folks up here somewhere, you can join too. And I'll ask you questions. Don't worry, the QR code will be on all the slides where we ask you the question like this. Is when prompted, what % of Americans do you think said they had heard of Charity Water? Is it 5%? Is it 10%? Is it 27%? Now they're moving all over. You can see the numbers and guess. Give you a couple seconds here to guess and see if we can get a winner. And there'll be more polls, so if you're just joining. Oh, we have 177, good sample size. No 68s, mostly 5%. Here's where we are. 5% is where we were. That was pretty surprising to me and to us when we got this data by using our brand tracker called Tracksuit, where they asked this question to a panel of people every single month. So if you're in the 95% of Americans who don't know who we are an international nonprofit on a mission to bring clean and safe water to every single person on the planet. We do this through the generosity and support of our community and through local partners. And to date, since 2006, we've been able to fund enough projects to bring clean water to almost 20 million people. Pretty remarkable. And the growth and rise, thank you very much. The growth and rise has been pretty astronomical, honestly. We had this little blip and then we launched our monthly giving program this spring and then kind of took off again. But then the last few years have been tricky. And I think this is not unique to us. The last, 2019, 2020, we're all trying to figure out what's normal, what's good, what's not. It's been a very, very tricky time period. But the challenge for us with 5% awareness and some plateau in revenue is our vision is to actually become close to a $250 million organization by 2030. So how do we do this? And thus began the quest. It's quite egotistical to make yourself King Arthur and the hero. So let's make Charity Water the hero. And on every good quest, you need a mentor, you need a guide. And for me, the big guide was this guy, James Herman. He's a New Zealander who wrote a blog post on LinkedIn that just connected so many things that I had been feeling and learning and experiencing and gave me language. And so I started going down the rabbit hole. I read white papers. I read his book. I took a whole course of Master of Advertising Effectiveness, and it showed me a bunch of other guides who are using research and data to say, how can we do advertising and brand growth more effective with research and data? And now I know this slide lacks a lot of diversity. It's not ideal. There's not a single American on there. You got Kiwis, you got Aussies, I'm Canadian, you got Brits. So God save the king and let's go. Here we go. You really have two jobs, is the theory. You can create future demand, sometimes we call it brand marketing, top of funnel, or the academic term build mental availability, the ability to be associated or recall at time of purchase or donation, or current demand. This is what probably most of us do most of the time. Get donations today, bottom of funnel, performance marketing, or physical availability, actually get the transaction. And now these two things have to work together, and they do work together. FOSFA, which is a marketing mix modeling platform, did a longitudinal study, and they found that those doing top of funnel and bottom of funnel saw a 42% increase in return on ad spend, but at 10 months, at 3 months, it actually didn't help. So these two things work together, but they work together more over the long term, and the trick is how you do them is pretty different. When you look at campaigns that are trying to do them both at the same time, they're not as effective as trying to bifurcate the strategy and do one and do the other. And the types of creative and the types of channels that we need are actually quite different. And so the model is something like this, where we have these sales activation or fundraising activation campaigns that spike throughout the year, But what's often missing, was missing for us, for a lot of organizations, is that blue line, this consistent brand building, carving out future demand that makes fundraising a little bit easier and allows you to grow more sustainably in the future. So it's not an either or, it's a both and it's about a balance. And these two fellows, Peter Field and Les Binet, they're like the godfathers of advertising effectiveness, wrote this book, The Long and Short of It. And in their research and analysis, they found that the right ratio between these two was essentially 60% future demand, 40% current demand. Now, a lot of caveats. All businesses and organizations are differently, kind of more digital-centric e-commerce orgs are a little bit more 70-30, what they found in their research. But I want to know what you think nonprofits are. So get your phones back out. If you haven't joined yet, you should be able to participate here. What do you think nonprofits are, our space, when it comes to this ratio? 20%, 80%, 40%, 60%. How much are we investing in future demand when it comes to how we are allocating our budgets and our spend? We're probably on the lower end, and you would be correct. According to the M&R benchmark, about 25% of all advertising spend is spent on awareness. And if you look at this, it actually goes down quite significantly from a large organization to medium to a small. And I understand. My first job out of grad school, I was the first and only full-time employee at a startup nonprofit in Zambia. We were not doing this. I led marketing in Canada for an international organization that was medium-sized. We were not doing this. So some of it might be inaccessible, but the concepts hopefully can apply, because this isn't necessarily unique to us, because we get the balance wrong all the time. So even though we were growing, we were seeing high ROI, we weren't investing in the brand and allowed this plateau. And when we started digging into it, we were like, actually, there's very worrying trends like earned traffic. So organic, direct, social, and referral. People looking for you on their own was a 5-year decline. Not good. Then we go into something like share of search, which is a proxy for market share. Market share is most correlated to future growth. Not good. We see a slight decline. You can actually calculate your own share of search. You basically find a list of competitors. We took the Forbes 100 largest nonprofits, took the international ones, grabbed their brand names, put them in Google keywords. You can set the dates, find the search volume, put it back in a spreadsheet, and calculate how much of that search volume share do you have and see how that trends over time. And this isn't just a problem that we're facing. I think we're all facing this problem. In our brand tracker, we can track other brands, like Doctors Without Borders, who has significantly more brand awareness and does amazing work, but they've been suffering brand awareness over the last bit. Everyone in this benchmark that we follow has been suffered, and the category, people who say I've given a donation over the past 12 months, has also suffered. We know this when we get reports from the Giving USA and looking at how giving has grown, but not from the same amount of donors. And one of the things that we don't talk about enough is this stat. What percentage of disposable income are we gathering? And it's been in decline since 2007 and flat going back to the 80s. So for all that we're doing, and we're doing a lot, you're doing a lot, we're working hard, we are taking no more wallet share today from the average consumer for philanthropy than we did 30 years ago. So we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing wrong, or what are we missing? And I think this is part of the thing that's missing for us. So this is really all of our journey, and what can you do about it? I want to use this analogy moving from lasers to chandeliers. Lasers to chandeliers. I'll explain in a second. This is something that Airbnb's been actually doing, moving away from performance marketing and more into brand marketing, and they describe it this way, their co-founders. If you want to light up a room, performance marketing is a laser. It can light up a corner of the room. You don't want to use a bunch of lasers to light up an entire room. You should use a chandelier. That's what brand marketing is. So I like the visual, of being in a dark room, searching for something like a remote control. So I asked ChatGPT, and this is what they came up with. Now, having a laser pointer on the end of a remote isn't the worst idea, but there's a second remote there, which is kind of confusing. So is this TV from 1974. Not sure why that's there, but I like the chandelier one even better. It is so bright, it has brought him to his knees. He's already wearing sunglasses. He must be blind because this huge-ass remote is sitting right in front of us. And my favorite part is, what is he watching? It's like Love Island hieroglyphics. But whatever it is, he loves it so much, his walls are plastered with it. This guy loves him some hieroglyphics. Okay, lasers to chandeliers. So here's the 3 shifts I think we need to make. One is we need to target more customers with memorable creative on high attention channels. It's relatively simple, but it takes a lot of commitment and buy-in because you are playing the long game. So targeting more customers. Imagine for a second you're not leading marketing in a nonprofit, you are leading marketing at a local steakhouse. Here's a visual. Okay? Not enough hieroglyphics. There we go. Okay. You're leading marketing at an Egyptian-themed local steakhouse, and you are questioning what you've done in your life to end up here. Okay, how would you go about marketing? Most of us, I think, would do things like people who've been to our restaurant before, people who've been to other steakhouses in the area, people who buy steak, maybe within 50 miles. Right? These are all very logical, rational ways to go about finding a target audience who's most likely to buy from us, make a reservation at the steakhouse. But when you do that, you miss out on people like Jeff, who doesn't like steak, but he books all the meetings for his boss, Judy, who loves steak. So you miss out on all that revenue when their clients come into town. Or John, who loves salmon, and you've got a killer salmon, but you're not marketing salmon, even though they'd go. Or Judy, who has every ad blocker and cookie blocker known to man, so you can't even target her even if you wanted to. So by trying to be so precise, we miss out on this bigger target market instead of saying, who's into fine dining and how do we reach them because maybe they'll like steak? That's the whole theory from this guy's research, Byron Sharp, and this book, How Brands Grow, and the Ehrenberg Bass Institute for Marketing Science in Australia. He says a growth-oriented strategy has to be about market penetration and reach. Tactics usually aimed at reach also end up reaching consumers that already exist, who have a heightened tendency to notice the brand. So basically, by going for reach, you still reach your current customers, but it doesn't really go the other way around. If you get so focused on who your current or best customer is, you don't get that extra benefit going on. And here's what the research suggests too. Peterfield and Les Binet found that market penetration campaigns were 3 times more impactful over the long term than loyalty-focused campaigns. And the biggest growth area isn't your heavy buyers, your most loyal donors, or your light buyers who give here and there. It's non-buyers. I'm not saying donor retention is not important. I'm not saying loyalty is not important. I'm saying if we want to grow, and our mandate is to grow very, very significantly, and all of our mandates should be to grow very, very significantly, if we are focusing too much on the people that are already giving today for our modeling, for our targeting, we are not growing the pie large enough to do the things that we need to do to change the world. So you need to focus more on increasing reach to new customers over loyalty from existing ones. You can't just be buckshot. You can still be strategic. So we looked at all of our donor past giving. We enriched the data. We found household income and geographies. And then we kind of laid that into our strategy and came up with an ideal broad target persona and made that the absolute bullseye of everything that we did. Knowing we'll get some people above and some people below, but everything that we're doing is oriented around this one person. So that's targeting more customers, finding your largest, broadest audience, orienting all you can do around that, and focusing more on reach and penetration here. All right, now with memorable creative. Poll time. How big of a profit multiplying factor do you think creative is? 20 times, 12 times, 5 times, 3 times, 2 times. An econometric researcher, Paul Dyson, looked at thousands of campaigns and tried to isolate the different variables to come up with this data to say, what's actually driving performance for these campaigns? Give you another second here to answer. You guys are pretty good. It's 12x. So the things that I talked about, targeting, it's important, but not nearly as important as creative. The ratio between brand and performance, important, not nearly as important as creative. The only thing more important is actually brand size, which Jeff today was talking about the things that Coca-Cola do. Yeah, we can't do those things, partly because we're not Coca-Cola. It's the double jeopardy of being a smaller brand or a smaller organization. You can't do what they do or what we do, and we can't do what they do. It's one of the challenges. But the thing that we can all control to generate more performance is our creative and creativity. And this has been one of the things that I think has really led to Charity Water's success. It's been in the DNA from the founder all throughout our lives. It's to create, to innovate. Our brand archetype is the creator. So we don't have nearly enough time to go over all creative, but I want to suggest this little equation for you to create mental availability. So that's the association of our brand for a cue to be recalled. It's distinctive assets times attention plus positive emotion. So this is a quiz time, but this is going to be call and response, not a poll. I'm going to start a jingle for an insurance company, and you will hopefully finish it. Otherwise, it'll be very, very bad. Okay, are you ready? Are you ready? Okay. Nationwide is. I'm so glad that worked. I've never done that before. Okay, here we go. Like a good neighbor, we are farmers. Liberty, liberty. No, we're not doing that one. Okay. These jingles and these characters that they develop are great definitions of distinctive assets. They spend so much time and energy so that you will remember that, or you will remember this character when you have to go for insurance. And why they spend so much time doing that is that market is very undifferentiated. We know the jingles, but I could not tell you why State Farm is any different than Nationwide. They rely on a personal relationship with your broker or your community or marketing. And that's essentially our world. Unfortunately, so many of our nonprofits are actually not as differentiated as we might think. But the good news is differentiation in this world is not as important as distinctiveness. You don't need to know the differences between your cause versus your cause. You need to know what you are unique or what you do have. And for us, it's our Silver Fox Scott Harrison founder, who's charismatic and gorgeous on video, which helps. And the jerry can. It's part of our logo, but it is one of our distinctive assets. And you may have a distinctive asset, or you may have to develop them if you go down this path, but you have to make sure that they are consistently present. Otherwise, the emotion and the association that we're driving isn't connected to something that can more easily be recalled later. So that's the how, but if we don't get attention, if your advertising goes unnoticed, everything else is academic. It's a quote from one of the founders of agency DDB, Bill Burback. And Karen Field Armstrong did this research of how much time or attention do you need to form a memory? And she found it's about 2.5 seconds is how much attention you need to form a memory, not much. But then they analyzed ads and found only 15% of ads reached the 2.5 second threshold, which means 85% of the ads they analyzed are essentially wasting their time, energy, and effort if they're trying to focus on brand. Or put another way, when we create dull things, we're exclusionary. When our content isn't fun or inspiring or engaging or exciting, we're not letting people be a part of our cause. This guy, Adam Morgan, who's another white British dude, did a study and also found that half of the ads were dull. Just neutral emotion. Neutrality is basically death for us in communications. We need people to feel something. And they came up with this dull dial, 5 questions you can ask yourself if you're actually being dull. And one of them is, are we having a character or something distinctive? But one of the ones that I want to highlight here is, are we denying an assumption? And I think this is one that we can actually apply to ourselves, is take an assumption people have and deny it. Here is what I think is a great example of denying an assumption.
This is Burundi in Africa. And this is Cecile, who's walking to fetch water for her family.
Oh, yeah, Steve.
Oh, okay. Well, then what's in the bucket? This is the school that your donations built, brick by... Oh, then who built it? Of course. Your generous donation.
Oh, yeah.
This is the center of the community that your donations... No, look, it's not, is it? Okay, what did Tia Fund do?
Biciye mu ishengero Tiafandi yarafashije guhugura wese.
Oh, that's much more helpful.
Nibaza ko yamaze kubitahura.
The thing I hate most about that ad is we didn't do it. It's so good. And our lead videographer, Kelly, who's genius, showed this to him, and he was just remarking how technically perfect it is, too. Like drone shots, and it's awesome. But denying an assumption, a few years ago, Canadian Down syndrome, look, I'm not playing this one because there would be rivers of tears in the aisles if you've seen this one. But denying the assumption of how we don't let people with Down syndrome be cool or fierce or fun. We don't even give them the chance. And so it's about this girl who boxes and drinks margaritas, and they're trying to deny an assumption that we can often make with people with Down syndrome. Or we've been running this ad and asset for a couple years where we took not all, but a lot of the mean comments we get in our ads, and we shot a video where we just read them and answer them. Things like, why haven't you solved the water crisis by now? You've raised $700 million. And we say, oh, thank you for noticing. Yeah, we've actually helped 20 million people. Thank you. And so many people came to our defense in the comments, and it performed really, really well. So things like, why do you take a salary? So we're playing off these assumptions people have. So are there assumptions that people make about you, your cause, the people you serve that you can deny as a way to gain attention? So that's to get attention, but what emotions do we actually need to evoke? Poll time. Which core emotion do you think is connected to longer-term business effects? What types of emotions should we be trying to affect or evoke if we want our brand to be recalled much longer, much better, much more into the future? No one's going for disgust? Happiness and surprise, you are correct. This guy here, Orlando Wood, baller name, works for System 1 as the Chief Innovation Officer, wrote a book called Lookout, another one called Lemon, and they analyzed human emotion across thousands of ads and then mapped that to their in-market performance. And they found that happiness was the biggest driver of emotion for long-term benefits of 30. Surprise was 10, and then all other emotions were either neutral or negative. Now, in our space, nonprofits, it's hard for us to not evoke sadness. I'll show you an example later. But the idea is when we need to fundraise today, that's a very different type of creative. If we want people to feel good about us in the future and tell their friends, it's a different type of emotion. So we need to evoke things like happiness and surprise. And one way to do that is through humor. Humor makes us happy, and when we do it, sometimes it's actually a little surprising too. All these insurance companies, it's humor. Right? They're using humor to evoke happiness and connect it to their distinctive assets. So how can we use humor as a way to do this? Now, humor is very tricky. We tried some humorous ads a few years ago, leaning into the whole COVID-ness of it all. Like, oh, you want to be a part-time DJ? Maybe not. You should join our monthly giving program. It bombed. So bad. We took it down in 2 weeks because performance was so bad and we were getting destroyed in the comments. These are the nice ones. But this was my favorite. This isn't it. That's it. The other one's like, what consultant did you hire? We're like, ooh, we did it in-house. So how do you know if your content will actually evoke the emotions that you want it to? System 1 is one of these pre-testing tools. Now, pre-testing is a great way if you're on these high-volume channels like TV or out of home where it's harder to A/B test, you don't get data as quick, and it's a little bit more opaque. And part of the reason why I showed that tier fund example is because System 1 actually ran it through their pre-testing tool, and I'll show you the emotions that you can see here, but the first one is happiness. Here's the happiness curve as people watch that ad. When the woman kind of breaks the fourth wall, you also get this little spike in surprise. And then surprise kind of tails off as it goes on, but it maintains happiness pretty well. And so as we were trying to figure out our TV strategy, how could we kind of lean into these types of emotions, we did some pre-testing. So I'll show you 2 examples. The first one's kind of our public service announcement, kind of our control, pretty standard. The sound's going to be a little wonky because it's a capture, but we'll try this out and you can see how it goes as it plays.
What would you do for clean water? For over 700 million people around the world, the answer is literally anything. Walk for hours, stop going to school, sacrifice sleep, health, money, and time, all for water that's not even safe to drink. It doesn't have to be this way. This is a problem we can solve together. Join Charity Water in our mission to end the global water crisis. Visit charitywater.org today.
That's kind of our control ad, and then here's the new one that's in market now that's part of this bigger strategy as we try to shift to future demand. Pretty good. Fun fact, that's Scott's backyard, our founder, and they're like neighborhood kids that we got, except for the one kid to act. So if you put these side by side using System 1's pre-testing, they do things like star rating. So they try to make it easy to know how good is this for long-term brand building versus spike rating, which is how good is this at generating sales or fundraising today. And fluency rating is how well is your brand getting known through this. And so you can see some of the differences. The PSA does a not great job at brand building, much better at spike rating because people feel something, and then fluency rating because we have our logo and URL throughout the whole ad. Whereas this new one, no fluency. You don't know who this is until the absolute very end where we're trying to be more surprising. No sales. I don't know why you would donate necessarily out of that other than maybe you just like that we did that ad. but a much better star rating in terms of long-term brand building. And so when you look at them side by side, you can see how the emotions go throughout the video, and there's a significant change in the levels of sadness. Now, when we look at the comments around sadness, people aren't really mad at us. They just feel bad that people don't have clean water. So it's hard for us to control some of those emotions. But then you can see like pretty good levels of happiness that peak, and then pretty low surprise versus when the kid hits the mat. You see this big spike in surprise and good levels of happiness. But again, fluency kind of builds throughout that whole ad. This is partly why in a lot of DRTV or direct response TV, you show your name and logo in the bottom third the entire time, partly for response, but partly for brand. Whereas at the other one, it just spikes near the end. So that's kind of like a Cadillac pre-testing tool. We've used other ones like Listna, used to be Usability Hub, where you can get, for like a couple $100, a sample of preference testing, videos, statics, which do you like better, and ask a question. Or conjointly, it's about $300 to get a study turned around in about 2 days, and you can ask things like happiness and surprise and emotion before you go into market. So the big thing here is creative is absolutely paramount. The best buying strategy in the world on the most effective channels is wasted if we don't invest properly in really good, powerful creative, which I know is a challenge again. But if we can't do it, it's almost not worth actually doing it. So we need to build that mental availability tied to our distinctive assets, connect our content. Can we evoke surprise and happiness, deny an assumption, or use humor, and use pre-testing tools before we go on these channels? So that leads us to the last step on high attention channels. So in that course that I took, one of the principles is this idea of creative commitment. So in their analysis of looking at spend, channels, and duration, they found that those three variables were equally linked to overall campaign effectiveness. Or put another way, the more you spend on the more channels for longer leads to a more effective brand campaign. Now, there are some diminishing returns, like once you go above a certain amount or above a duration, it kind of tapers off. But if we think about some of the most iconic brands campaigns that we know, they spend a lot of money over a lot of channels over a long period of time. Snickers, which is really kind of the inspiration for us and our Water Changes Everything campaign, You're Not You When You're Hungry, because it uses a little bit more humor. And that's really what we're trying to do with this Water Changes Everything campaign. So we're going to be running this for probably 2 years, different versions of it, but you should see nothing but Water Changes Everything from a marketing reach perspective. So we're trying to build up Water Changes Everything, our distinctive assets, and evoke some of these feelings. But the principle is you got to run future demand campaigns for longer on more channels. I know spend is one of the hardest things for all of us to control, but we can try to control that. Okay, so when we think about the most effective channels for developing mental availability, what do you think it is? Display, TV, YouTube, TikTok, out of home, Facebook? I'm curious in this one, so I might let it go a little bit longer. Okay. All right. YouTube seems to have leveled off a little bit. So Dentsu, company, did some research on the cost per 1,000 impressions, or CPM, by channel, and this is what they found. Display, Facebook, out of home, TikTok, really cost effective, right? No, it is about attention. If we are reaching people and we cannot generate attention, we cannot evoke emotion tied to our distinctive assets and build a brand. So they actually refactored this based on attention. And this is what it actually looks like when you put them side by side. And we can highlight the ones that become a lot more effective when it comes to attention. Things like TV, radio, cinema. You have to watch those things if you're sitting in a movie theater. Versus, look at display. Goes from the most effective efficient to the least effective efficient when we're trying to develop attention. I'm not saying display is bad. I'm saying if you're trying to build brand, it's not great. And so if we look at this kind of line, above the lines maybe not great, below the lines probably better, there's a little bit of a pattern where we can see some channels are just pretty ignorable, right? Display ads, some out of home. Then we have in-feed. You're scrolling by, they really need to grab your attention. It's maybe a little bit better, but you can still pretty easily ignore them. And then you have these almost interruptive methods of displaying your ads, and they're the ones. You may not like them, but you pay way more attention to them than you do other channels. So if you're trying to grow your mental availability in your brand, we have to focus more on high attention channels. So we spend a lot actually on YouTube. It's fairly unique in the nonprofit space, and we looked at our campaigns by device. Same content. Computers, mobile phones, tablets, essentially the same, but look at TV screens. Significantly higher watch rate throughout, both at the start and at the end. Then we looked at things like interaction rate and engagement rate, cost per view, cost per impression. It is efficient and engaging on TV screens. This is partly why Peter Field's research says big brand campaigns spend about 45% of their budgets on TV. It's not necessarily a thing of the past, and when I say TV, I mean like connected TV and TV screens, and nonprofits are only spending about 20% of ad spend on TV. Again, not everyone can do TV, I understand, but it seems like an underused channel if we're trying to focus more on brand, and maybe we need to invest a little bit more. And so you might be saying, I can't do TV. I would challenge you that it's a lot easier today than it used to be. There's a tool like Mountain, which is connected TV only, that operates almost like every other ad platform, where you can do targeting and retargeting and see ROI, cost per impression, things like that. And then media buyers, we use Tatari to buy our TV media, and they're halfway between an agency and a platform. But buying TV is not nearly as hard as it used to be. And the other thing is, if you have a YouTube account, you can run TV. If you have Google Ads and you run YouTube, you can either create a brand new campaign focused on reach and awareness limited to TV screens, or just go into your current campaigns and say show on TV. And then you can go in and see performance under Insights, where and when ads show, and Devices tab to see if you're getting different engagement rates. But one of the things that you will find is no conversions in there, because people are watching on a TV screen, and then what are they doing? Going to their computer or their mobile phone. So it all shows up as cross-device conversion, which very few organizations track all the way down into their CRM. So this puts us in a position where we need to be more willing to measure things like incrementality, using marketing mix modeling like we're experimenting with, incremental attribution. These things are a little scary, but if you're trying to find ways to connect the top of the funnel and the bottom funnel, you have to be more comfortable with some of these analyses. We can see things like channel decay, where when we run meta ads, which are really donation focused, outside of the first week, there's no benefit. It's like you give now or that's it. Whereas TV has a much longer curve. It doesn't peak till 8 weeks and then takes another 4 weeks to kind of fade off. So focusing on these higher retention, longer term recall channels is oh so important to display our creative. So more channels over a longer period of time, channels with more high attention to build that mental availability, and channels that have a longer term recall. So now it's early days. We've really only put this stuff in market since July. We are seeing a small bump in awareness right now, but when we dive in more to our absolute target market, this age group, we see an even more significant bump. And then we look at things like this across the funnel. So awareness, consideration, and preference, we're seeing pretty significant increases. We've also seen a decrease in our cost of acquisition and an increase on our return on ad spend for bottom funnel already. There's a lot of factors going on in there, but it's looking pretty positive that this approach might actually bear some fruits. So just to recap, here's the 3 shifts. Target more customers with memorable creative on high attention channels. And one thing that I can't talk about now, but if you score me lower than Tim, maybe next year I can come back, is retail. In a month, we're launching a retail space in Franklin, Tennessee. It looks like this. That's what we call a callback. It actually looks more like this, where people will be able to come and experience the water crisis in a way that they've never been able to before. See portraits and holographic boxes, go on a water walk on a treadmill with LED screens, put on a virtual reality, actually move a real pump and see water flow in a room, and ideally secure some donations as well. So hopefully I can come back and share more. Good luck to you on this quest. I hope you found something useful, and good luck.